Welcome to Camera Shake Podcast, episode 84. And as always, we have a super awesome guest on the show. But before we get there, remember that if you are listening to the audio version of this podcast, you can hop over to YouTube, where you can not only hear our lovely voices, but also see our ingenious faces in full technique. I don't know why it's ingenious. I know the first thing that popped into my head. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. Anyway, go over to YouTube if you want to see us. If not, carry on listening to that. Because today's special guest is...
before you do announce who today's special guest is,
yes,
I'm pretty sure this special guest is going to be listening to this audio episode in the car.
Woo! Oh! Yes! Oh! 100%. Right, so please welcome the highly renowned international portrait photographer, speaker, educator, the master of behind the scenes, and our brother from another mother, YouTube's very own Duracell bunny. Give it up for Tommy Reynolds one more time.
I've got to give you a clap. That's the best intro someone's ever given me. That's brilliant. I love that.
Yes. We love it. Tommy, man, how are you?
I'm very good, guys. Thank you so much for having me back on. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. It absolutely is a pleasure to have you on the show. Of course, you've been on the show several times. It's been fun every time. And of course, we met not too long ago at the photography show in Birmingham for the first time in real life, in the flesh, as they say.
In real life, in the flesh. And it felt like I'd known you for years, even though we'd only met face to face for the first time at the show, which is one of the many great things about the show, is being able to put names to faces finally. And it was so lovely to meet you both. I think I went straight in for hugs in the car park.
We did. Yeah, in the car park. That's right. I remember because we were walking past, and I just before I even seen you, I just heard somebody shout, "Camera Shake Podcast!" Yeah. It's like, oh, it's Tommy. Yeah, wicked.
You guys are famous.
Well, I mean, we had our moments of fame at the show.
Yeah, there were a couple. It was interesting.
Yeah.
It was weird feeling. Feeling.
It's good though. I mean, it was. I think for us, the photography show was amazing because, since we started this podcast at the beginning of the pandemic, really, it was literally the first time that things became, tangible. Like there were other human beings in the same space. And not only did we, have an opportunity to meet up with, former guests of ours, but also just generally making new friends and new contacts, because everybody was so happy to actually be at a photography show and be able to meet up with other people after 2 years of online Zoom sessions and all the rest of it.
Yeah, well, they obviously tried to do the online versions of the show, which was good, but it's obviously never the same as actually being at the show and playing with the equipment and actually seeing people face to face. So it was so lovely. It was better than I thought it was going to be. I knew it was going to be a smaller room that they would use, but it was it was still really, really nice. And as you said, it's good for making friends. And even with the limited numbers that it was this year, it was I still had a great time. It was still really good to see.
What was your highlight?
Some people, but not all. So, but hopefully next year it will be able to have all the same people there. Some of the brands weren't there, so hopefully everyone will be back next year, next September.
Definitely. What was your highlight of the show?
My highlight of the show, honestly.
Careful.
It was probably meeting you two. Honestly.
There we go. You heard it here first.
Puts the fishing line out.
Reel it in.
No, it really was. One of the highlights was seeing you two and seeing Alex Benyon again, because we don't see each other that often because he's up in the Midlands. I'm down in the Southeast, so it's always nice to see Alex face to face. And obviously giving the talks as well. I gave a talk about my last personal project, my last portrait of series, and it makes it all worthwhile when you're being able to share a video with someone or a project with someone in a room full of people versus just hitting the publish button and then twiddling your thumbs and not getting feedback physically from people. There's no better feedback than seeing people physically seeing their reaction or being turned by it. It's no better feeling than that. Like, my heart rate goes so much when I'm watching people watch my video or seeing people look at my photos. It's you're actually getting that real feedback, and there's no better feeling.
Yeah. I mean, we were at. Well, actually, you dragged Kersten on stage, didn't you? During one of your talks.
How could I
Why not?
forget? Yeah. So for one of my talks, I purposely didn't hire a model because I wanted to show how the lighting techniques I was doing you could do with anyone. So I purposely pulled up random people from the crowd, just because I thought it would make it more interesting as well and a bit more memorable. That I've not used a model. I'm just going to use random people from the audience, including you. So
fun,
Kirsten pulled you up on stage, and you've got a pretty good rock kind of Dwayne Johnson kind of eyebrow action going on in one of those shots as well.
Awesome. I love that you mentioned that, because that is the part I'm going to play to my wife, who doesn't like The Rock very much.
Does anyone?
No, well, I'm trying to convince her, because I really quite like him, and I'm actually quite liking his acting skills, believe it or not. Right?
So, are you watching these blindfolded? These films?
Yeah.
Well, no, but so we have this friendly banter at home where I'm like, "Ooh, there's a new movie out with The Rock," and she goes like, "Oh no, I'm not gonna watch that." I'm like, "Oh man, come on, it's actually really good." One of these sort of things.
What's wrong with you?
I don't know. It's because he's always very well lit. I'm telling you,
He's really well lit.
So that's literally the conversation that goes on in my house, because my wife went to film school, and she she specialized at the time. She specialized in like script writing, right? And so she's screenwriting was her thing, and she has a degree in English and all the rest of it. So it's the dialogue that really matters to her, And of course, I don't really give a damn about the dialogue. I look at like, ooh, the color grading is really nice. Oh, look at the way they backlit. That's amazing. Ooh,
look at Dwayne in that underneath that light.
Yeah, and so we have these conversations where I'll be like, hey man, this is look at this is awesome. Look at the way this is lit, blah blah. And she goes like, yeah, but the dialogue's really shit.
Yeah.
It's kind of important.
Oh no, it is. I know, I get it. But this is also one of the reasons why she's my editor. So whenever I write a blog or something for some website or another, she's my in-house editor. She'll go through the whole thing.
I imagine she's brutal as well.
Well, so yeah, I mean, she kind of is, and it took her a little while to get used to my writing style, because it's totally different from her writing style. So she loves sort of an official voice almost, right? She's really good at like writing letters of complaints. Like she's brilliant at that. And I'm more conversational. So when I write a blog, it is my voice. It's I could read that and it would probably sound more or less like I'm actually just saying it. And so that's just my writing style. So it took her a good couple of years or something to get her head around that, and so she can now edit it or proofread it with my voice in her head. Do you know what I mean?
My wife and I like that. She's very formal. She works for the NHS, so she's doing essays at the moment. She's studying for her masters, and when I write things down, I want it to come across as informal, and so it literally sounds like I've said it out loud. So I think we're very similar in that. And when she reads my stuff back, she wants to change it to make it sound more formal. So there's so we kind of balance each other out.
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly it's exactly what's happening in my house. So so that's also the kind of conversations that happen.
Wow, I imagine your wife's terrified when she's got your voice in her head.
Probably.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you be? But then I always say why would you let a non-native English speaker write a blog in English?
Well, you do know that you can't. Obviously, you're half North American. Let's say, shall we? All right, Canadian. Fine. We'll call it what it is. But you can't. You can't write down in
a. Well, yeah, it may have happened once or twice.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Hey?
Yeah, but, hey.
Hey?
Anyway.
Anyway,
Anyway, So Tommy, what's been going on since the photography show? We've we had planned to meet up and to start a little project together. That was delayed because as some of the listeners may know or may not know, my stepson ended up in hospital for a little while. But he's better now. It's all good. And so that's something we're going to catch up on, obviously, in the new year. But since we've seen you, what's been going on in your world?
So I've just released a new project, a portrait of Tina. That's something that I've been. It was actually an idea that I had ever since the last video I made. So for those of you that don't know, I do a portrait series on YouTube called A Portrait of, and the way I've been doing it, I'm only releasing maybe one a year just because it takes so long to plan and do, and it's coming out of my own finances, etc. But this new one, the idea was kind of formed almost immediately after the last one last year that I made with Hazel, the woman with the wedding dress, why she cancelled the wedding. And it was an idea that my mum actually said. So Tina, the feature of the newest one, she is her best friend. And my mum said, you should do a portrait series or a portrait video about my friend Tina. And I knew of Tina, my mum's friend, for, well, all my life. But I never knew that she was struggling with mental health. She kept it hidden from most people except her close friends, including my mum. So I was totally unaware. And I'd seen Tina many times in the 6 years that she was seeking professional help for her mental health. And my mum then told me about everything that she was going through. I was like, I cannot believe that I wasn't aware of it. But it was kind of a lesson that, you really don't know what people are going through. You don't know what's going on behind closed doors. So many people will put up a front. So I thought that would be a good, it would be interesting then to approach her and see if she would like to feature in the next episode. And she said, yes, I would love to be a part of it. So and then at the same time, coincidentally, I got a message from a guy called Krish who works at Carmarthen Cameras in Wales, which is a camera store in Wales. And they're very close with Canon UK with all sorts of promotions that they do in store. And they also do live events. And I met Krish at the photography show actually this year. I've never met him before. And he said, we'd really like you to come to our store and give a demo and do a presentation. I said, yeah, that would be great. I'd love to. And he told me how that came around. So Canon UK approached Carmarthen and said, you can pick 2 of our ambassadors to do a demo and a talk. And he said, can I throw a curveball and give you a name who isn't an ambassador? And they said, yeah, sure. Who? And they said, Tommy Reynolds. So without me knowing, Krish has been following my work for years and he recommended me. And as it transpired, they said, actually, we can only send you 1 ambassador. And Krish said, well, I know you said yes to Tommy Reynolds, but could I have just Tommy Reynolds then? And they said, yeah, all right then. If you want to give him a shot, give him a shot. So I kind of have this Krish from Carmarthen Cameras for giving me the opportunity to collaborate with Canon UK. So because my name was put forward, I went to Wales recently. I did I did a demo, did a presentation. But leading up to that, I thought, well, now I've got my foot in the door and I've got this shoot coming up with Tina that hadn't been filmed yet. I thought, wouldn't it be great if I could maybe contact Canon and say, look, I know I'm doing this talk. I want to make my talk even more special. Is there any chance that you could loan me some Canon equipment and I can get this video filmed and photographed with Canon equipment? And at the end of the talk and the demo, I show off this video and premiere it. So it'll be the first time anyone sees it is at the event. And I thought, hopefully that will score me more brownie points with Canon, show that I'm really keen and interested and I want to provide even more for this event, but they haven't asked me to. And because I had my foot in the door, I thought there's a good chance they might say yes. And luckily they did. Yeah. So they loaned me the Canon C70 because usually we film everything on Mike, my videographer, uses a FS5. So we were using the C70 and a whole host of amazing RF glass. And I've recently bought the R5, so that sort of stills were covered. But now we have this beautiful product that we've made that's entirely shot with Canon. So we then took that to the event, did the demo, and then played for the first time the Portrait of Tina video for that. So that's kind of what I've been up to. And so it gave me a kick up the arse to get this project done. We filmed it on one day, and then I had less than 2 weeks to edit the whole thing. And a week of that, I had weddings and other bits and pieces. So really, I was working solidly on my computer here for about 6 days solid trying to get this edit ready for the event. Not only that, my videographer Mike has just had a baby as well, so we had to get it in time ready so that before he became a dad for the first time as well. So I had a deadline and I had that push to get it done within 7 days, and it was a long old stretch, but I'm so pleased with the product that I have now. I'm one of my proudest pieces of work. So that's what I've been mainly up to since I've last seen you at the show.
So much to talk about there.
Well, and let's start with this. I mean, funny enough, you mentioned the Canon C70, and of course, if one of you YouTubesters, who watches us on YouTube, you will see our lovely faces being filmed by our C70 just over there. So, that's where.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah. So that's how we're filming ourselves. With the C70 over there.
Been using the C70 for a little while now. But what, a year?
Yeah, roughly, yeah.
Maybe.
In fact, there's a podcast episode from about a year ago where you're just changing over, and I think you're explaining your reasons why.
Yeah, go check that out. I can't remember the episode number right now, but you'll find it.
You'll find a link up there, right up there, or maybe over there. I'm not sure, but somewhere up there.
No, it's a great camera. We really enjoyed using it.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's got there's a couple little things here and there that you might think, but the more you use it, the more you get used to that particular camera, it really starts to shine when you find you work out its limitations, basically.
Well, one of the biggest feedbacks that Mike gave me, obviously he was the one using it more than me, coming from the Sony FS5 that he uses normally, I said, what's been the biggest difference? And he went, the colors are so much better, he said. Anyway, he said this looks amazing straight out of the camera versus his camera that might need tweaking a little bit. We had a LUT that was imported onto his monitor so that we had an idea how it would look. I used Film Convert, so I'd exported a Film Convert LUT that was then on his, and we just fired it up and it just looked amazing straight out of cameras. And that was one of the biggest differences that Mike said, that he said the colors are just incredible, that he really enjoyed. I'll tell you,
one of the downsides of it is when you're filming yourself like we're doing right now, and you're trying to watch yourself back on the swivel screen on it, why they put the microphone inputs right in front of that swivel screen so that all I'm looking at is a bunch of XLR plugs. I have no idea.
Sorry, I can see myself. I'm fine.
Yeah, you're fine. But we're not using the Ninja this time as well.
No,
I
didn't have time to set that up today.
Well, it's probably a clever thing because my eye line is always completely off. So if you're watching any of the episodes on YouTube, you'll notice my eyes wander off to an external screen, which would be approximately there.
Well, I've got this is a little RX100 for those of you watching on YouTube. I'm looking at an RX100 here, the compact camera, but you're actually here. And when I do online consultations, I really emphasize and try to look here, even though I'm not actually looking at your eye line, although it looks like it because you're there. But out of politeness, I do try and look this way as much as I can, and I have you in my peripheral vision right there.
Yeah, it's really difficult to kind of stick to that, not to get sidetracked. That's what I find. It's like it's maybe because there's movement on the screen, and you're drawn to movement. So it's I find that actually
so you're like a T-Rex or something.
Yeah, I am a T-Rex. Right, let's just commit that to history. Yeah, I am a T-Rex.
Right, so
that's a soundbite.
Yeah, exactly.
Do a remix. Someone do a remix of it.
You can hear some Mark Bolan in the background there.
So I do have a quick question for Kay, just before I just go back to your portrait of Tina for a second. What's this? And for those listening to the audio,
I thought Tom Baker walked in the room.
Kay is currently wearing a scarf.
I'm wearing a scarf because it's friggin' freezing outside.
So hipster.
And secondly, I still have a bit of a cold, so I'm liking the comfort of this.
I'll leave that there.
Yeah,
I'll say more when we're off camera.
Well,
So, Tommy, I wanted to ask you about your mum's friend Tina, and you having met her many times and spoken to her many times while she's been getting some support for her mental health issues over a few years. Is I want to know how that kind of affected you and how you felt now going to speak to her about something which you didn't know anything about over the past few years, and then asking to do this project with her. How did that How did that feel for you, having that conversation?
Yeah. I it was very strange. I did say to her, I felt like I needed to say to it. I said, I said, Tina, I had no idea, and I know it sounds silly because she wouldn't, and that's exactly what she would wanted. She doesn't want people to know, and as I'm sure a lot of people wouldn't want to know. But I felt like I had to say it, even though it was the obvious thing. I said I felt almost like I needed to apologize because I know of her and have known her all my life, but so I had to start with, like, as Tina, I had no idea that you were struggling so much, and naturally she just shrugged it off and be like, yeah, it's obviously I didn't want people to know, but when I told her about the project, it was actually my mum had kind of briefed her and said, if Tom was to approach you, because my parents' family call me Tom, not Tommy. Anyone post uni calls me Tommy because I changed it from uni. So my mum said, would you be happy if Tom ever did approach you? And Tina said actually yes straight away. And this was a year ago when I did my last video. So it's taken a year for me to then approach Tina and then say, would you be happy? And I showed her examples of previous videos to give her an idea of how open other people have been. Like, that's kind of the ideally how much I would like you to open up as much as, because the more you open up, the better it's gonna come across, and the more empathetic it's gonna be, etc. So and she was up for it. So I'm really pleased, because I never expect people to say yes, because you are being so vulnerable and open. But I had no idea to the extent of how bad it was for her. One thing that she won't mind me saying here, but she didn't say in the final video, is that she almost took her life because it got so bad. She wasn't as comfortable saying it on camera, but it did get that bad, and after eventually seeking professional help. And one of the things that she said that isn't in the final cut is that if you do seek professional help, you might not find the right person straight away. And that's okay. Sometimes you won't find the right person straight away. I myself had therapy at the start of this year, when I felt at my lowest with my mental health. And for me, therapy didn't quite work. It was a temporary fix. And one of the things that helped me, which really resonates with me with Tina's story, is that it was more about the family. It was the family connection and the friends. So for me, the biggest help for me was having an amazing network of friends around me that got me through and helped me through my mental health. And it's similar to how Tina kind of came out the other side as well with her mental health.
And I mean, that's awful to hear that she got to a stage that she felt that might be the way out. That's just horrendous to hear. From a filmmaker's perspective, how did you? Because it must be, if it's one of the first times she's really spoken about it to someone who she knows well, but hasn't spoken about this to before. How did you, as a filmmaker, kind of make sure that she was really comfortable and you got what you needed from a film perspective, but she was comfortable giving out the information that she was giving out? How did that shoot go on the day?
Yeah. Naturally, the fact I've known her all my life, I think, was already a start. There's already a bit of trust there. She's best friends with my mum. She knows my work very well. She's even come along to when I've had premieres and exhibitions. She always comes along. She loves my work. She's so sweet. So there's a trust there right at the start. And what might not be obvious is that the shoot itself was actually 2 days. So the first day was all the stuff that you see B-roll wise of her walking on the beach, kind of in a place. So she already had the time to get used to the environment, where we're going to be. When I initially said we were going to do it at the beach, she said, that's perfect, because on my birthday, I love to go to the beach anyway and get fish and chips and relax. That's my thing to do. And I knew the interview was obviously going to be the hardest part. The first day was kind of a warm up. It was shots of her walking and talking. So nothing too kind of, putting yourself out there. It's obviously the interview that's the main thing. So when she arrived, we had about an hour where we were just laughing, chatting. I told her what was going to happen, how long it was roughly going to last, an idea of some of the questions I was going to ask. She actually gave me a list of bullet points of stuff that she was happy to talk about. So I kind of then turned those into questions. So she already had an idea of questions that I was going to ask because she already had an idea of what she was happy to speak about. So she kind of already had prepped in her mind then how far she wanted to take it. And looking at the bullet points, they were as far as I was happy for her to go. Before the interview itself, I said to her, I just explained to her about editing. I said, we've got enough memory card space than you have breath in your lungs. You can go for as long as you want. If you want to stop at any point, you can, and we can have a drink, which we did at one point. What else did I say? I said, if you mess up or you fluff up, don't worry. The beauty of editing is we can cut that out. If afterwards, I'll send you a draft. If afterwards there's something you would prefer to not be in, we can take that out. So lots of reassurances, and it will be in part 2 that I will eventually release when Cassie and Mike and I sit down together. In part 2, you will see that conversation where she sits down and you see me explain that and giving her that reassurance. And she just said, "That's fine, Tom. I absolutely trust you." So that was so giving her that as much reassurance as possible helped her calm down and relax. And also she asked, her daughter Sam was there as well in case she forgot something, and also for the moral support as well. So all of those little things kind of helped put her in a comfortable place and happy for her to share.
Absolutely. I mean, to do the B-roll stuff on the first day before the actual interview, so to speak, on the second day, it's such a smart move. Such a smart move, to get someone used to a camera. Yeah, and exactly. The style of things, it's a really important takeaway for anyone who's doing anything similar.
Because intuitively, I think you would sort of think of it the other way around, where you basically do the principal shot or the principal shoot the first day and then base the B-roll on what was being talked about in the actual interview. So I think that would be, very often that would be such a logical way to approach it, but to do it the other way around it makes a lot of sense.
Well, we did that. The very first one I did when I did. For those of you that are watching that might remember, Holly was the girl who was deaf.
Yeah,
we did that. Actually, we did the interview first because I thought in my head that's the most important thing because that is the narrative, that's the crust. It's that interview. So we did the interview first and then the photo shoot afterwards, and we felt that Holly wasn't. Probably could have been more comfortable, and we realized maybe if we'd swapped it round, which we did with Hazel, the wedding dress shoot, we switched it around and realized that works so much better. So we then did the same for Tina, except we did it over 2 days because we knew that we wanted to have more time with the B-roll to do more B-roll versus just off the cuff photo shoot. We wanted more depth to the story with Tina, so that's why we did it that way around.
And that's another really important takeaway. And I think this is something that is very well worth remembering, is that, you do something, you debrief yourself afterwards, you look at what went well, what didn't go so well, and you look at how you can improve what it is that you're doing, and you implement these things the next time around. That's a really important thing. I mean, we talk about this all the time. It's something that we do on shoots, and that will basically not only make you a better filmmaker or photographer, but it'll your work in itself will benefit from it.
Absolutely. And you can't feel bad about it either. If you feel, this didn't go so well, it's normal. It's perfectly normal. The important thing is that you understand why and you perhaps make a change. Or it might be that just for that one particular situation or one particular shoot is not quite the right approach for it. Doing B-roll first might be the wrong approach for the next portrait series that you do. Might be.
And also,
who knows?
Also the unexpected happens. I mean, the unexpected is guaranteed to happen when you least expect it. So, as far as the planning process is concerned, we've learned this the hard way. Whether it's weather, we talked about this the other day. We did a shoot not too long ago, where, the weather was against us from the first second of filming to the last, and it's, that's something I think especially in these climes over here.
Yeah.
We get taken into consideration more seriously. But you live and you learn.
Absolutely. It was one thing you said about seeing, finding improvements and seeing what worked well and what didn't work so well. One of the things that I really took away from the last one I did with Hazel, the wedding dress shoot, there was a moment in the interview where Michael Mowbray, he had a 70-200 lens on. He was kind of doing the side angle, and there was a moment where he did a really quick zoom in because Hazel was starting to get emotional and kind of, and Mike wanted to zoom in to get a tight shot of her face. And it's weirdly enough, it's my favorite shot is where he zooms in really quick and then refocuses. Now, naturally, people would cut that zoom out and then cut to where the finished zoom ends. Mm-hmm. But what I loved about that shot is that I didn't hide that zoom. It felt like more documentary, where the camera, the lens wanted to zoom in and then refocus to get it. It felt more documentary and it felt more real. It felt less staged. And so one of my biggest takeaways was from that one shot, I want to make the next one feel even more documentary.
Yeah.
So that's why in the Tina one, you see the mic stand, you see the softbox during the interview. The camera shakes a bit more when they go in for an embrace or a hug. We didn't want to cut around it to make it look like it was. We didn't want it to look staged or people think, oh well, that's just fake. By adding in those imperfections with the camera movements, it made it feel more real and more documentary, and that's exactly what we wanted. It's such a raw project.
You're gonna love Peter Jackson's Beatles documentary, Get Back. I don't know if you've seen it. Have you seen it yet?
I haven't seen it yet. I do want to see it.
My God.
I just logged into someone's Disney account 2 days ago, so I have access to it now.
Right. It's, I tell you what.
Wait, should I set that on camera? I don't know.
everything you've just said, you will find in this documentary. It's one of probably the most stunning, staggering, incredible documentary I have ever seen.
Really?
It's 7 hours of. I watched this for 7 hours in utter disbelief. It was not only beautifully done, but for film stock that's over 50 years old, to be restored to the point where it literally looks like it was filmed yesterday was incredible.
Wow.
And to get that personal insight into what they were doing when they were recording this and all the trials and tribulations and everything else is just remarkable. And the fact that it was so raw, because they had a film crew following them for like 3 weeks or something at the time, and they shot some like 60 hours of footage or whatever. It was just unbelievable. And sometimes there are glimpses where you can see them like on a platform. You can see the camera operators getting stuff ready, changing film. There are moments where the cameras were running, but the actual Beatles, were told they're not. So you get this one scene. So just a little giveaway for those of you who haven't seen it yet.
I haven't seen it.
Right, there's one little moment. I'm not going to give too much away, but there's one moment that really was. It was staggering that it actually happened, but it was even more amazing that it ended up in the documentary. So at one point early on, George Harrison quits. He leaves. So he leaves. Right, get this right. So he leaves. He basically leaves the Beatles. He walks out. He's gone. So then John Lennon and Paul McCartney decide to go to a side room and have a little heart-to-heart conversation about what just happened, how they're going to deal with it, and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
Unbeknownst to them, they obviously went to a side room because they didn't want to be filmed at a time. But
their mics were still on? Their mics were still on?
No. The film crew had hid a microphone in a flower pot.
No.
Yeah. And that whole conversation is in the documentary, of course, audio only. But it's just, it gives you such a personal insight into what was going on. It's just really amazing. And just, just as you were just, talking about, these kind of zooms and the kind of, these kind of shots that ordinarily you would cut out and you wouldn't leave in. A lot of that is still in that documentary. And it just really makes the whole thing so personal and close up.
Yeah.
And it gives you such an
And personal is the right word for it. Because if this was if your video, Tommy, was about, I don't know, any other topic that's not personal, you're talking about something technical or something like that, they wouldn't look so good. They wouldn't work, those kind of shots. But because the topic is so personal, that adds such a whole different level of a personal touch to the filmmaking process, and it makes all the difference. And these are the little gems that have a great video, great production to a completely different level.
Yeah.
Well, you almost feel like you're a fly on the wall. You feel so privileged that you're in this space, and that you feel like you shouldn't be here, that you're in a space that you shouldn't be, but you're experiencing that. Like with the quick zoom, it's like it wasn't planned. Like it doesn't feel planned when you do that, because everything's supposed to be so gleamingly perfect. And at the end of my video where she said, thanks to my friends and family that I've managed to get through, and it's all thanks to them. And then you see me say, I think that's a perfect place to end. Is there anything else you want to say? And she was like, no, I think that's it. And then Sam steps up, comes to give her a hug. Now, normally you might end the documentary when she says, and it's all thanks to them. Fade to black, maybe.
Yeah.
But I carry on. I want to see the rest. And it was when I did an interview with Sean Tucker that I shook his hand. I said, thanks very much for watching. And then he turned to me and went, that was really great, dude. Are you happy? And I went, no, I'm really, really happy. And I thought, I want to include that. I like that little exchange that we have. So there's a really slow fade to black, and you can still hear us having that conversation. Again, that little exchange is when Sean's not expecting that to be in the video. There's nothing wrong with what he said, but it's a vulnerable and a human exchange, because I'm not doing presenter mode. Like, thanks for watching. I'm not doing that. Mm-hmm. So it's because of that moment that I thought, I want to see the rest. Everyone wants to see what happens directly after those last words. So you see Sam giving a hug, and then she's like, "Oh, that was okay. Was that all right? Yeah, that was okay." She said, and I want to see that. And I just think it feels more human. It's just like
totally more
you feel
human.
like you're in the room that you shouldn't be seeing that moment, but you're there in the room.
Mm-hmm. And that's why I called you the master of behind the scenes earlier, because you really have that sort of sense. And I think. Correct me if I'm wrong, but and it's annoying cold. I don't know why.
Best get that scarf tightened up, hey?
Yeah. I remember, we were having a conversation at one point. I can't remember what this at the photography show before that, but do you remember back in the day of DVDs?
Yes.
When one had to go out and buy a DVD or order a DVD, and you could get like the standard DVD version, which was the theatrical version, of the movie or whatever. But then you could get sort of the double DVD set, which had, the behind the scenes and all of that kind of stuff on a separate thing. And I remember, much like yourself, I always used to go for the double DVD set with
all
the behind the scenes. And very often I'd watch the behind the scenes before I actually watched the movie.
Yeah.
Just because I've always been so fascinated with how things are being made in the process and all of that kind of stuff that went into that. And I think I sort of I remember us having a conversation about your sort of slight obsession with that. As well.
Kind of is, yeah. Like and Cassie's the same. My sister, she loves behind the scenes. Probably gets that from me. But I just feel like it makes you appreciate the film more. Some people will say, "Doesn't that ruin the film?" And I think, well, maybe to some, but to me, it doesn't. It makes the film even better, because then I can appreciate the filmmakers and everything that went into it, the process that went through it, the level of effort that went into that one shot. It almost feels like trivia. Like I can tell to people, I say, well, actually, for this shot, they had to do this, this, and this, and no one ever says, oh, I wish you hadn't have told me that. Like, that's ruined it now. No one ever says that to me.
My wife says exactly the same thing to me. She says the same thing. She's like, oh, well, doesn't it ruin the thing for you, the movie for you? And I always say to her, like, well, look, we all know it's a movie. I mean, we all know it's make-believe, right? There's no question about this, right? I mean, this didn't really, War of the Worlds didn't really happen,
What?
Well, I mean, actually, I tell you what, this is...
Sorry, there are too many spoilers happening in this episode.
I know. What are you saying? Star Wars wasn't real? I mean, what? But I always think, like, it's a little bit like, when people nowadays... in the world of headshots, like you do a modern style kind of New York style headshot, and somebody goes like, yeah, do you cut the top of his head off? And it's like, well, yeah, but we all know it's there. I mean, you know what I mean?
Stop it. You're blowing my mind.
But I remember there was one shot, actually mentioning War of the Worlds, the Tom Cruise version of that. There's one shot in that that even flabbergasted my wife. I remember we were watching it together, and there's this one shot where they're fleeing they're driving out of the city. They're on a highway, and they're in this like minivan.
I know the shot you're about to describe.
Yeah. And and they're basically having to get out of the way of like lots of cars that have been left behind. And there's a camera shot that is so incredible when you watch it. The camera flies. It looks like a continuous shot.
Is this the through the car and
it's like the camera's everywhere. It's in front of the guy. It goes around it. It goes through the car. It goes over the car. Behind the car. Over the car. It's like you just go whoa 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 whoa. How? And then you go, wait a minute. How did they do this? Like, how is that actually done? And of course, there's a large, a big part of the behind the scenes footage on that is about this shot and how they created this, which parts of it were practical, which ones were CGI and all the rest of it.
It's like 1917, right?
That's a different thing though, because a lot of that was practical.
Yeah, it was,
and that was,
there's a few jump shots and whatnot were all CGI, but that's great. I still haven't watched it. Do you know that?
That's really only two shots. The whole movie.
Nick,
there's a reason though, because I want to be in the right frame of mind to watch that. I want to watch it as a film, and I want to rewatch it as to kind of dissect it a little bit as to what's going on. And I'm not finding a couple of hours free to where I can sit down without a laptop, without a camera knocking about, where I can just sit there and watch. And it's frustrating the hell out of me.
I didn't think I was going to find 7 hours to watch the Beatles documentary, but I did.
See, that I also want to watch really into it, rather than doing other stuff like I normally do.
Oh, you have to, yeah.
For sure, yeah.
Speaking of War of the Worlds, they remade it again.
Did they?
Yeah, like a year ago, 2 years ago, or something like that. 2017.
That's a TV show.
No, it's a film because it popped on Virgin the other day. I saw it. Got 5 minutes in. Turn it off.
Really? Is it bad?
Not Tom Cruise.
Well, if it's not Tom Cruise, then no.
We do like a bit of Tommy Cruise.
Yeah. Tommy, if you're listening, no.
Tom Cruise is always running in his films, isn't he?
Oh, yeah.
Makes him look taller.
Yeah. Well,
lots of low angle shots when you're filming Tom Cruise.
Yeah. Lots of like apple boxes,
Apple boxes, yeah.
There's some spreading image mockery of Tom Cruise. Have you seen it?
I haven't. No.
Oh man, they're mocking him so bad, like for being short. There's some driving scenes. It's like,
for being short and not Scientology.
I think that comes into it sometimes. So it's mainly for being short.
Bless him.
Yeah. Oh, bless.
So tell me, okay. So coming back to your portrait of Tina. So you mentioned earlier that you're trying to do a a portrait, like that roughly about once a year.
Mm-hmm.
Because of all the prep that has to go into it. How long does it take you roughly from the sort of inception of a project like that to the final?
Well, I say it takes a year because of prep. It's not entirely true. It's just because of finances and other commitments for sure. I don't want to rush these, and
no.
As much as I would like to be consistent, because that's supposedly the thing to do. My friend said something something that's always stuck with me ever since I did the first one, and he said, look, even if you only make one of these a year and you look back in 15 years time, you are going to have an incredible body of work to look back on. So don't feel rushed that you need to do more to be consistent, to keep up with the social media game. So it's not, so it's that they just happen to be once a year. It's not like like I'm aiming for it, or I won't do any more than a year. It just happens to be over the last few years. That's when they happen, because I need to obviously have a clear diary for a bit, and no other work on. I've got to make sure I can finance it, pay for the location and the camera operator, and have time to edit, etc., etc., etc. So Tina's one was different because I almost had deadlines. Unlike the others, there was no real deadlines. But for this one, just because of the Canon UK thing and the talk that I was doing, I had 2 weeks from start to finish to do it. Other times, like the Hazel one, I filmed it and it wasn't out for 2 months. So it's more just a finance thing, and when I've got time to commit to that big personal project, really. Yeah.
It's also, I guess, it's probably also about finding the right subject.
Absolutely. Yeah. I don't know why I didn't say that, but that's an obvious one as well. Yeah. It's and these are all people that I know. It's not like I'm taking applicants or anything and I'm reading through this.
Audition.
That'll be good. Everyone I've interviewed and spoken to are either a close friend or someone I know very well. And again, it just so happens that it's happened to be once a year. I've got in the pipeline a subject for the next one. I can't say who it is. I can't actually say who it is right now. I can tell you offline, but it might happen sooner than within a year's time. But yeah, you're right. That's definitely a factor as well. People aren't queuing up to tell their mental health story, obviously, because it's so vulnerable. So yeah, that is definitely a factor.
Yeah,
it's, what really fascinates me with your little films, if I call it that, is how really close up and personal and how open your subjects are talking about themselves. I remember, I think, again, we've spoken about this on the show before, but when the pandemic first started, when the first lockdown just started, literally on the first day, I thought this was going to impact us as a family and the kids and stuff. I thought I was going to make a little documentary about how it affected us, because it was like, unprecedented, an unprecedented situation and everything. And I thought it'd be interesting to document how we as a family would deal with a pandemic and lockdowns and all the everything, all the limitations that came with it, and the stresses and everything else. And I decided to start the whole thing off with interviewing my wife and my kids, and being interviewed myself by my wife, about the fears and the feelings that we had about what was about to happen without actually knowing what was about to happen. So that was at a time when literally the first lockdown had just been announced. Everything was extremely serious and grim looking. But nobody actually knew how long this was going to last. We all thought it was going to be over in like 6 weeks, something at the time.
Yeah.
And what actually happened was, I interviewed my wife and my youngest daughter, for example, my stepdaughter. And what became really very obvious very quickly was how much fear there was in their voices about the unknown and the time that they had. And I remember sitting down to edit that first episode, because I think the idea was to make it episodical. And I remember sitting down to edit that first episode, and after about a couple of hours or something, I basically went, I just cannot do this. Like, I can't do this. And I basically parked that ever since then. And I can't bring myself to even watch the raw footage back, because it was so emotionally loaded. And, to listen to my then 8-year-old daughter talking about her fears and thinking like, oh man, I didn't realize how much of this she actually understood.
Right.
And, and how it actually affects her, even though, she's 8 years old and she hears it on the radio or on the radio? Oh, on the wireless.
On the wireless.
Oh, yes.
On the crystal.
Yes. On the, she hears stuff on TV, and she overhears adults talking about it and everything else. And, it's one of these things where I just went, I just cannot do this right now.
But at the same time, I think it's great that you have done it, though, albeit you can't edit it right now. Maybe maybe even Nick can edit it, but it's good that you've documented that moment in time. As you said, it's unprecedented, and it's a way of archiving. That's why I love doing these projects, because and that it's on YouTube and it's somewhat archived, if you like, that you can look back at that moment in time. And I think it's a great thing that I didn't realize how much I loved documentaries until I started doing my own project. When I realized, I actually, I love documentaries. It's so raw and real and passionate and meaningful, and you can with it you can I can just load it with so much creativity and art forms with huge. That's the beauty of video in general. You know, you can add music, we can add photos and moving image, we can add so much creativity in video specifically as a medium. So that's why I enjoy it, because you can just load it with all your favorite things and supercharge an emotional state.
And you can really manipulate the viewer as well, just by picking the right music, for instance, to go underneath. It's like you have this ability to really drive somebody down the route that you want them to emotionally end up. You know. So
that's one of my favorite parts, is picking the music. I use a music bed. There's others out there like Epidemic Sounds. One thing I like particularly about Music Bed, I feel like personally the production value is stronger and it's bigger. It sounds like bigger productions, and I love orchestric music and cinematic ambient music. I've got go-to filters to find my pieces of music that I like, and it's pieces of music that I enjoy editing to, that I have an emotional response to. I'm a sucker for a love song. I like love movies. You know, I want that emotional kind of brain chemical in you know, that's what I respond to. You know, that's what makes me think, and so that's why I like to make these videos. They're my own version, and you know, it started out as a behind the scenes video, a technical behind the scenes video, and now it's transpired and transitioned to you know, it's just natural progression in your work, and how now it's becoming, you know, like short documentaries and films, and then there's still behind the scenes of me actually taking photos and seeing photos and seeing the technical aspect, but hearing an emotional story in the music. And it's just what I love so much. I'm just putting so much of all the good stuff into one package and one product that I can share with everyone.
Do you pick the music first?
Interesting. Sometimes I do. Sometimes the music dictates the whole narrative. Sometimes I can listen to a piece of music and you have an idea straight away from pace, because of the what's that, the time signature? Is that the right
Tempo?
word? You get an idea of pace and how the camera might move. You visualize how fast it might move. What kind of cuts are they cuts, or are they what kind of transitions are they cuts? Are they crossfades? So sometimes, I will pick the music. I will pick the music first. Obviously, that's not the norm in the film industry. You would have it the other way around. And I think we spoke about this actually on a previous episode as well, where I don't have the luxury of obviously having an orchestra make music based on what I filmed. But sometimes that gives me the inspiration when I hear the music first, and then all of a sudden the visuals come to mind. So I don't mind working that way. I quite enjoy it. I've got a random playlist on Music Bed that I will play through, or it will just play at random, and I could be working for, cool, this is really nice, and I'll favorite it, put it in my playlist, and then I might revisit it later and think what maybe idea could come later. I've got a bunch of tracks that I would like to use in the future that I think, I love this. It gives me an emotional response to it, and so maybe those I'm just waiting for maybe a story to come along that would fit that. But sometimes the music dictates the narrative. Yeah,
absolutely. So you don't have John Williams or Hans Zimmer behind you there, no?
Actually, oh man, have you seen Hans Zimmer's masterclass? It's masterclass.com. There's a trailer where he speaks about how he did the music for Batman, and he's got even down to the position of where he puts them in the auditorium. So he's got 4 French horns on the left, 4 French horns on the right, and they're way up into the upper circle, and it's just 2 notes, and how that they can have such an emotional response, like doom, doom. Just 2 notes, 4 French horns left and right. It's just incredible. Like, the man's a genius. Just the response to that, it's so good.
Yeah, he's all right, isn't he? He kind of knows what he's doing. Yeah.
Well, it's a very methodical and German, I should say.
I see.
Hans Zimmer, John Williams, who else? James Newton Howard, who does a lot of M. Night films. Who's the guy who did The Nightmare Before Christmas, who also was the voice of Jack? He's also was it Summit Howard, is also a great composer. Williams is an absolute legend. I love the Jurassic Park theme tune because there's so many layers to that. You think that the theme's going one way, it's got a recognizable melody, and then there's another recognizable melody that happens later in that Jurassic Park theme. Yeah. Obviously, I don't think I've said it even at the start, but I actually went to filmmaking school. I went to film school, so that's kind of where I feel like for the first time since graduating university over 10 years ago, that I'm now finally putting together what I've learned and making it as part of my work.
And we have seen some photos of Tommy at film school.
Oh, yes, we have.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
And if I can encourage Tommy to send those over after we're done, we might slot them in here, but we'll see.
Yeah, that'll be fine. No worries.
Okay, wait for you first.
I had somewhat of a Beatles haircut, I think, actually, growing up. Everything was flat, forward, down. Certainly wasn't grey.
Well, that was sort of the emo phase, was it?
I did go through an emo phase. I even had blonde highlights in my hair at one point, riding a skateboard round my area. It wasn't a good look.
Well, I don't know, I'm on board with the skateboarding. That's still happening. Yeah, obviously.
Did you also wear scarves indoors?
Sometimes I do. Sometimes I do.
You don't have to make him feel better.
Well, it's just comfy,
Oh, it's comfy.
I love this scarf because this looks like a scarf from Victorian London, basically.
Oh,
yeah.
Right. Okay.
That's.
You're like
I'm getting Doctor Who vibes.
Oh no, my wife said exactly the same thing. She goes like, "Oh, you're my favorite Doctor Who." And I'm like,
Are you one of the female Doctor Who's?
To be honest, when you first popped up on Zoom, I thought I was sat with Tom Baker.
Tom Baker.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean, are you a Doctor Who fan?
No, not really. Never really got into it.
I never knew
more Star Wars and Star Trek.
I never knew Doctor Who before I moved to the UK, and I remember this was in the late 90s or whatever. My flatmate went like, "Oh, what? You don't know Doctor Who? I got to show you something." And he showed me some old episodes, and I was watching him I don't know what these special effects are crap.
What do you mean?
What am I looking at? It's terrible.
What do you mean?
So I never really got.
It's kind of crude and charming, isn't it? I think it.
Yeah.
Are the words because they still kind of have that even in today's episode. I don't watch it. I caught one episode though last week, or just bits of it, but they don't try and go over the top with their effects. It feels like it's an old episode with modern technology. I watched the one with statues, it was just cuts, and then they got closer and closer.
I think I've seen that.
It's nothing where they're actually moving. It's very very Doctor Who-esque from back in the day, isn't it? It's very charming kind of special effects. I think it's more than visual effects.
They managed to really very cleverly get over this we're replacing the lead actor bit, but just whatever it's called. Are they remorphing or something, or whatever the thing
no
is?
idea.
It's he goes into his thing, and then a different actor comes out, and all of a sudden he or she is Doctor Who now. So
yeah. Have you got a police box in your front garden?
No, actually, funny you should mention that. No, I don't. But I was thinking about acquiring a red phone box.
Really?
Yeah.
So the only phone boxes you can get these days all smell like urine.
Yeah.
Well,
just saying.
Well, I have a puppy dog at home, so everything smells like urine anyway. No difference. Plus, we just had COVID, so we can't smell anything. It's all good. But yeah, I thought it'd be cool. It's quirky, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. Where would you put it?
In the garden, yeah. In the garden.
Front garden?
No, in the back. I think that's the idea. Yeah.
How are you getting that in the back garden?
We have an alleyway.
Do you?
Yeah.
Oh no, I didn't.
Yeah, there's an alley by the side of my house. I can get in there.
Okay, if you get a police box, you come talk to me again.
Yeah, or a police box. Yeah, that'd be cool. Sure. Yeah. It's for all the non-Brits amongst us, there's a certain nostalgia when it comes to red phone boxes.
I'm interested that you're going for a red phone box rather than your own Millennium Falcon.
Oh, that would be cool. I'd be game for that.
See?
Yeah.
There you go.
Somebody sent me photos of somebody's front garden with like Yoda like statues and like bushes.
Oh, I showed you.
That was you.
I showed you.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
My friend was on a job and
that's
it was
right.
just happened to be in the garden.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very
Bizarre,
awesome.
right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm totally game for that. So this is where the show descends into Star Wars talk, by the way.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. So Tommy, so what else is happening on the portrait photography side at the moment? So you did some demos for Canon. I also know you did a workshop in London.
Yes, it was a workshop that should have happened last April, and we did that. We eventually were able to reschedule that, and it should have been sold out, but one of the attendees caught COVID. So I'm really glad that I asked everyone to do a lateral flow 3 days leading up to it, because as it transpired, someone was asymptomatic and actually was tested positive. But yeah, we were super safe. Everyone wore face masks, and we did a workshop in London. I've never done any workshops outside of the Southeast. I would like to try, and I've had requests to do it, but I just have a fear that no one's going to turn up if I go further than my hometown or London or Southeast. But I have requests and would like to next year maybe try it and take the workshops further afield and do the Midlands and maybe even far as Glasgow, potentially. Who knows? Maybe next year. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Well, that'd be
But
amazing.
I've got more emphasis on wedding photography. Actually, I'm going to be doing a host of wedding photography specific tutorials for next year. It's something that I'm focusing more on. It's what, to put it bluntly, makes me far more money than anything else I currently do is wedding photography. So, and I'm really enjoying it more ever since I got the R5. Doing those type of events on that camera is so much easier and more enjoyable, to be honest. So it's something that I'm focusing more on next year is more wedding photography, as well as hopefully doing some workshops further afield than Southeast.
Would you find this the main difference between using, I think you were using a 5D Mark II beforehand?
I had a Mark II, and then I had a Mark III for 9 years. I still got it,
right.
and now the R5.
So in what way does the R5 make it easy for you to shoot weddings, very specifically?
Specifically autofocus, nothing to do with the quality. So if I was purely a wedding photographer, I'd probably have gone with the R6 or a couple of R6s. Because of what I do outside of weddings, the commercial portraits, I did want the extra megapixels and also the extra video features that come with the R5 as a hybrid shooter as well. So the main shot actually of Tina, front on shot, was actually the R5. It wasn't the C70. The C70 ended up being the side shot, and we used the front on as the R5, and that really blew me away, the quality. We used the 85mm RF 1.2 glass, which just looked incredible. Nice. And the main difference from the Mark III to the R5 has been that autofocus. I knew I'd made the right decision. Same as my wedding photographer, actually. I knew I'd made the right decision when I went mirrorless, when I shot my first wedding with the R5, and I had the bride coming down the aisle towards me at 1.4. I was spot on in focus every single shot as she was coming towards me. And I knew then I've made the right decision going mirrorless.
Yeah. It's scary. The autofocus is scary good.
It's just so much faster. I can't tell you. It's so much more enjoyable to shoot with, knowing that 99% of the shots will be in focus. And obviously lifting the camera up high and using the LCD screen, which is obviously something that I've not been used to, because I've only just transitioned from DSLR to that. So I'm getting used to that feature. I know it's old hat now, but it's nice to be able to lift it above head, knowing like what I see is what I get. Using if I'm shooting natural light, I can shoot quicker. Like if I'm just using a diffuser, like I did with the Tina shoot, we were just using a diffuser. We weren't using off-camera flash. If I'm using that at a wedding, I know I'm going to nail the exposure, because what I see is what I get. So for those reasons, it's been good. Nothing to do with megapixels have made it better. Yes, it has more megapixels, but it's been the autofocus has been the main reason I've transitioned to that camera.
I haven't used the R5 myself, but I use an R6 as well as my primary stills and kind of secondary video. And the autofocus on that is just out.
It's the same as the R5, which is why I would have gone with just the R6 if I was purely a wedding photographer, because the autofocus is the same in the R6 as it is in the R5. so that's why I would have been content with the R6. The autofocus is incredible.
Yeah. Oh, love it, man. But I can't believe you got to play with the 85.
I was a kid in the candy store. Again, this will be in part 2.
I'm so jealous.
Where I filmed me unboxing the C70 and all the RF glass when it came to my house. And I didn't have to return the lenses right away, so I had them an extra day, and I had a wedding this extra day. So I took the 85 and the 2870 f2 lens to this wedding, and 90% of the shots I got that day was on one lens, was on that 2870. Yes, it's a heavy lens, but my God, did I feel so much more confident during that wedding. There was even a moment where the bride and groom had specifically asked for formal shots to be taken down the steps and by the fountain, but they had quite a few older people at the wedding, and so last minute I said, we're gonna have to do it at the top of the stairs, and my camera bag was inside, and I didn't want to run and get that thinking I needed to get a wide angle, because at the time I had the 2870 f2, so it was no problem. I could just zoom out, still get beautiful f2 shot at a 28mm focal length. So for that reason, I just felt, oh my God, I'm so glad I have this lens on. And it's just, nice. Perfect wedding lens. It really is. It's just so much money though. So much money. I really didn't want to return it. So I will eventually buy it myself. That will be the first RF lens I buy. But for now, the EF glass is still pretty quick.
Yeah, totally. The RF glass is absolutely unreal. I love it. Absolutely love it. And I really want that 85. They do 2 versions of it, if I remember correctly. The kind of the regular version, one which has got this kind of I think it's got like a highlight roll off, and it's very, very smooth. And it is, you can see the difference in the bokeh between the two. It's really, really interesting.
I didn't know they made 2.
I think they do. If I'm wrong, I'll cut this out. But
no, we're going to leave this in. So you punish me every time.
No, because I was looking at them maybe a month ago, right? And they did. There was two slightly different, very, very slightly different versions.
Okay, yeah. Okay, I'll have to look into that. I don't know then which one they sent me. It was there. Are they both 1.2?
Yeah, I believe so.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna go off camera and just look it up in case
it was on another league, because I've never actually owned an 85mm lens. I've always wanted to get one. So when I had the opportunity to use it at a lens, it's a focal length that I'm not used to. But shooting at 1.2, because it wasn't that long ago, so it gets dark pretty quickly this time of year. And I was shooting at 1.2. ISO was screaming high, but it's okay on the R5 compared to the Mark III. Yeah. The eye autofocus was locked in and it needed to be at 1.2. And I was just so blown away. That lens. I tell you what I love
about the 85, or about 85 focal length in general, especially for portraits. It's one of these funny things, when I do headshots, I typically start off with a 70 to 200. At a focal length of like somewhere between, 160 to 200, probably around that. And it's a good way to start. It's the go-to lens for a lot of headshot and portrait photographers, obviously, because of the compression that you get and everything else. It's also good because you're at quite a distance from your subject, and as you build up that rapport with your subject, it's useful to keep that distance at first. And what I tend to do is, so halfway through the shoot, I switch to the 85. And then I'm, of course, considerably closer. But by that time, I've built up that relationship. And this sort of fear is gone. We're now, or the subject is now used to being photographed and the lights going off and, that massive lens in their face and all the rest of it. And you get closer. And the funny thing is, with pretty much every session, 80 to 90% of the shots that the client picks in the end are shot with the 85. And it's almost like, the 70-200, on one hand, sort of the warm-up lens almost.
It is, yeah.
But even when I look at the shots and I compare them, I really almost always prefer the look of an 85.
It's a great focal length. There's a reason it's as popular as it is.
Exactly.
so it's great for that. If for an all-rounder lens though, and I'm just looking at the EXIF data on Lightroom, the 35mm for me is the most popular lens that I use on a wedding day. 85mm really would, well, if I owned one, it did only come out during the couple portrait session when I had that controlled environment. But yeah, the 35mm for most things, but you're quite right, 7200 is the warm-up couple portrait lens for me. Yeah,
that's it. I mean, the 85, for me, I use it really 95% of the time. I use it for headshots, close portraits, that sort of thing. Anything from the top of the chest upwards, really.
It's a cracking lens.
It's a great lens. I mean, it's either 50 or 35. In actual fact, I mean, I don't actually have a 35. You do. I use a 24-70 for wider portraits very often. Because I actually quite like the slight distortion you get at the wide end.
Yeah. So while you guys have just been chatting, I have been looking up the Canon RF 85s, and I was right. I just want to say,
right. There are two.
Does that mean we're not cutting out that bit?
No, we're not cutting out that bit.
Okay, right.
So they do the 1.2 85, and then they do a 1.2 85 with DS coating on it.
Oh,
right. Okay.
Which now, there is a price difference, as you can imagine.
Is it
the one without the coating, and I'll tell you what that does in a second. The one without the coating is...
Scroll up again.
Hang on. Is £2,870.
That's without the coating.
With the coating, it's $3,300.
Whoa.
Now, if you have a look, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to show this online, but there's the difference. So on the right is the without the coating. You're lovely looking bokeh. And on the left is the one with this coating. Can you see how would you describe the difference between those? Okay, so
interesting thing about this, actually. When I look at the bokeh, or bouquet, whatever you want to call it, I prefer the one with the coating. But if I look at the model's face, I like the one without a coating much better.
It's interesting, isn't it? They are different.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, when I look at the actual, the actual face, there's no doubt.
I wonder if they were shot differently at different times.
So does that mean you need both lenses, take the same shot twice, and then composite them, and then composite them together?
I love that.
The best of both worlds.
So this is what they say on the overview for this particular lens. It offers superb sharpness along with exceptionally smooth out of focus highlights. The silky smooth bokeh, and they do put that in rabbit ears.
Is it phonetically spelled?
Is made possible thanks to a new DS coating, producing a lens that is perfect for sensitive portraits where capturing exquisite detail with beautiful background separation is desired. Right, so all that means is that the bokeh is slightly more bokeh-y.
You could combine this if you created a lens that had basically the coating only around the outside of the lens and left a centerpiece that's uncoated.
Yeah,
be interesting. That way you can get the best of both worlds.
Yeah. So what I remember is looking this up, the DS coating, and they got a whole page dedicated to that DS coating, what it's all about.
I'm on it now.
It's quite some price difference for it.
Yeah, but I'm looking at these two images, and I find it hard to believe that bokeh looks as sharp as it does on the non-coated ones.
I'd like to see it other tests because I don't think that's a particularly great comparison. There.
No, it's not.
I'm on the Canon UK website about it, and to me, the non-coating looks bigger. The bokeh looks bigger.
Yeah, because it doesn't fade at the or fuzzes out as much. It's sharper. But what do you think, Tommy? If you look at the model's face, what's your impression of that?
Honestly, not saying I prefer one or the other, but it looks like there's more bokeh on the coating without the defocus.
No.
To me, the one that's without the coating looks like a shallower depth of field because the bokeh balls are bigger.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's personal taste.
Yeah,
it is absolutely, definitely.
I wouldn't be yearning for the DS coating, to be honest.
No.
The one without looks more. It looks shallower to me. The bokeh, I guess it's just personal preference.
I'd like to see some full-on comparisons of those.
So Canon, if you're listening, please send us both the lenses so we can do a full-on review.
Yeah. to make a comprehensive, decision.
Yeah.
Very
It
comprehensive.
might take about 10 years to do the comparison, though. Just saying.
Yeah.
Just saying. And Tommy needs to do them too. So,
Yes.
maybe we can get a couple.
Exactly. Yeah. We already know I take a year to bring out, a video now.
David, if you're listening to this, as I know you are, this is your chance. So, Tommy, it was an absolute pleasure having you on the show again. And of course, we'll be back in the new year with some of the projects that we've got in the pipeline.
Oh, yeah.
So this is it. We've come to the end of episode 84 of the Camera Shake podcast. I should probably be looking at the camera at this point. That always makes sense. But again, be reminded that if you are listening to that's just weird. If you are listening to the audio version of this podcast, you can find us over on YouTube. It's youtube.com/camera shake. I can't even talk today. Anyway, where you can not only listen to our beautiful voices, but also see our comprehensive faces in full Technicolor. Hop over there. Also, be reminded that you can check out our camerashakepodcast.com website and join the community over there. There's still a button that says join the community. That way, you'll always be in the know when something new and exciting is about to happen. Now, there will be some announcements in the not too distant future. If you want to be the first one to hear about those, make sure you hop over to camerashakepodcast.com, hit the join the community button, and be one of the first ones to know. Anyway, Tommy, it's an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Tommy.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you for having me.
We'll see you again next Thursday. As always, peace out.